Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Today's episode we're doing a quick off-season review for the NFC. So what I'll be doing is going through each team in the NFC, breaking down how I feel their off-season went, what significant additions were made, what holes I think the team still has, and a way too early prediction for what I think this team's floor and ceiling is going into the 2017 season based on the off-season that they've had. So we're going to start with the NFC North, and we'll begin with the Chicago Bears, who I feel had an opportunity to make themselves competitive this off-season. I think whilst they only won 3 games last year, they were better than their record suggested. Defence was a lot tougher than I expected it to be, and the offence was torn apart by injuries. I'm not sure they've got much better. Adding Glennon and then adding Barkley in the draft, I get why they got rid of Jay Cutler. I think going with Glennon for a year may have been a better move. Getting Barkley, I think, was a very strange one. I'm not sure Glennon's an inspiring option either. The receiver position still looks very thin. Losing Alshon Jeffries hurt there. Eddie Royal's gone. So they're young and unproven at receiver, although Cameron Meredith has shown some things. They'll be relying on Kevin White to step up. The interior of the offensive line is still good. Still worried about the tackle position. I don't feel that was addressed. I've said many times, I don't know if this was a good off-season to do so. Don't like the rest of their draft. Adam Shaheen was a strange pick in round 2. I feel they could have got someone that could contribute more immediately. I don't think they did anything to improve on the defensive side of the ball other than the Amu Kamara signing. I think that will solidify that group a little bit. Other than that, some underwhelming signs, guys like Dion Sims, Marcus Wheaton, they may contribute, but they're not going to make a significant difference in this team's fortunes. I still think the secondary is a major issue. Safety looks poor. Corner doesn't look like a great spot. The weapons on offense, you've got Jordan Howard. Beyond that, there's nothing that particularly scares teams. They really do need Kevin White to step up, and they'll be hoping to get some decent quarterback play. Nothing proven there. I think the ceiling for this team is probably an 8-8 type season. I can't see them being any better than that. I'd expect them to finish in the 4-12, 5-11 range. They could bottom out and be competing for a high pick next year. If so, expect everyone to get fired. So I still think the tackle spot's weak. Still think the receiving core is an issue. Quarterback could be an issue. Secondary could be an issue. I think that's far too much for a team to overcome and make any kind of run. The Detroit Lions, this is a team I think's got a lot of holes. I think they've had a good off-season. Love the Ricky Wagner signing. I think he gives them a very good offensive line. Him and Taylor Decker should be a really good pair. Inside, bring in TJ Lang. He'll replace Larry Warford. I think they should be solid there. Concerns would be the linebacker position. Bringing in Jared Davis should help there. I still think the other 2 spots are going to be a problem. The defensive line isn't great. Ezekiel, they're okay at end, but I think the defensive tackle spot's a position of weakness. Not too sure about them at safety either. So I think that could, the middle of the defense is a weak spot. I think teams could run on them pretty well. Offensively, I think they're pretty good. Stafford had a great year. The offensive line's good. Surprised they didn't look to bring in somebody to back up Abdullah. I would have liked to have seen them go for a running back higher up in the draft. I think that could end up being a problem. Whilst I think this team's got better, I think they overperformed last season. So I think 8-8 and 9-7 looks about fair to me. I think that's, last year I think they were more of a 6-7 win team that had some breaks go their way. Stafford's played incredibly well considering the utter lack of a run game. I'm not sure if that's going to be much better. Again, they'll be relying on Amir Abdullah staying entirely healthy. I think this defence has a lot of flaws. I think it's, even if they'd done everything perfectly this off-season, I'm not sure that they were going to be able to turn that side of the ball around. I think that's going to really hinder them. the lack of balance on offense. So, as I say, I think safety is a weakness. I think the interior of the defensive line is a problem. I think the run game is going to be an issue. I see this team finishing 7-9, 8-8 personally. 9-7 if things break their way. Move on to the Green Bay Packers, who, as always, somewhat quiet off-season. Bringing in Martellus Bennett, though, it's a fantastic signing. It gives him another legitimate weapon. He'll be able to block effectively for them. A two-way tight end is always a wonderful option to have. Brought in an army of running backs in the draft. Hopefully one of them will be able to step up and contribute. Losing the interior linemen they have, that could be an issue. Losing both TJ Lang and JC Tretter. Jari Evans is now there, which I'm sure he'll be able to step in and help right away, but I'm not sure if he'll be a downgrade over what they've got. But they're still pretty good at the offensive tackle position. Aaron Rodgers is still there. The receiving group is still strong. Running back, I still think is a spot of weakness, but this offense should carry on being very effective. In the draft, they've looked to address the secondary, which is a major problem. While it may not immediately help, bringing in guys like Desmond King, it gives them more options there. They've got a lot of youth in that secondary, and I think this is going to be a problem. I think some of the veteran teams or more experienced and higher quality teams will be able to expose them again. Losing Peppers might hurt a bit more than people think, because he was a very good role player for them. Clay Matthews is falling off. Nick Perry was good last season, and need to see that continue, really. The front seven's okay. Mike Daniels is still a stud. They'll be hoping that last year's first round pick, Kenny Clark, will step up, give them another weapon there. I'm not sure this team's got better significantly, but maybe a little bit down the line. Defence, I think, still got a lot of holes. I think the secondary is still a problem. Talent has been added. If they can step in and help right away, it might not be such an issue. However, they've got Aaron Rodgers. They should win this division again. They are going to be a threat to whoever they play. The offense will remain very dangerous. If one of these running backs can step in, add some balance there, and give them another weapon, then they're going to be very, very dangerous. Expect this team to win, at least 10, and possibly be competing for the number one seed in the NFC. Maybe 12, 13 wins definitely is not outside the realm of possibility for the Packers. I think they've had a pretty solid off-season all round. It's just about maintaining, really. In terms of the offense, defense, they've made effort to improve it. It's just, as I say, I don't know if it'll show this year. The Minnesota Vikings, interesting off-season for them. So they brought in Latavius Murray, who then immediately, I think, got superseded as their number one running back by Dalvin Cook. Of course, Adrian Peterson now with the Saints. Dalvin Cook, I think, was a great pick for them. I think he'll really improve them. Brought in Michael Floyd. I don't know if that will be of any significance. He's on his last chance. And Riley Reif. This team's offensive line was atrocious last year. I do think Reif improves the group, but I think he was overpaid, and I don't think he's a great player. Losing Peterson, not a particularly big deal at this point. Chad Greenway, no major losses. The draft didn't have the first rounder, of course. Dalvin Cook, probably the only major significant draft pick for the Vikings going into next season. Don't think this team's done enough. Defensively, they're very good. I would expect that to continue. If Sharif Floyd can come back, that would be a massive, massive bonus for them. Not a huge amount of weakness there. I think with Xavier Rhodes stepping up like he did, the secondary looks very good. Harrison Smith's still a stud. Xavier Rhodes is a good player. The linebacking crew's good. Defensive line's pretty good. I expect this to be one of the better defences in the NFL. The concern is on the offence. Well, that offensive line was just such a liability. I don't think they've done enough. As I've said with previous teams, I'm not sure what could have necessarily been done. It wasn't a great year for it. Maybe it would have been nice to see them go grab one of the guards. Dalvin Cook will help, but how much behind such a leaky line, I'm not sure. They've got some guys at receiver, but there's no one that particularly, I think, would scare a team. Could have done with a true number one. They were looking at Alshon Jeffrey. That didn't happen. Floyd's probably their best bet of that occurring, but I wouldn't want to put any money on that. I'm not sure this team's got much better. Again, I'd put this team in that kind of 7-9 to 9-7 range. If the breaks go well and this offensive line can perform, I think they're a dangerous team and they could easily compete with most of the NFC. I really do believe in this defence, and I do think their weapons are perfectly reasonable. And Bradford, he's not going to lose you games, even if he may not inspire and win them. So I think that's the kind of range we're looking at. A mid-level team, just hindered by lack of production on the offensive side of the ball. Moving on to the NFC East, and we'll go with the team that got number 1 seed last year, the Cowboys. I think it's been a bit of a rough off-season for them. Of course, losing basically their entire secondary. J.J. Wilcox, Barry Church, Morris Claiborne, all gone. Losing a couple of linemen. Doug Freese retired. Ronald Leary went to the Broncos. I think those are both things that will hurt. Lyle Collins will be given an opportunity to play right tackle. I think he could even be an improvement over Doug Free at that spot. Would have liked to have seen him get a number 2 receiver. I'm not a big fan of Williams there. This will come down to how these rookies improve. I think the offensive line may see a slight decline just because of a continuity, having 2 new starters there, but they should still be good. Frederick, Martin and Smith are 3 of the top players at their positions in the league. Des Bryant's still there. If the 2 rookies, well, mainly Dak Prescott, if he can improve, I'm sure more will be asked of him next year, and teams will have a better idea as to what he likes to do because of the film on him. If he can improve, this offense should continue to hum along nicely. Defensively is where my concern lies. I thought they overperformed last year on the defensive side of the ball. Claiborne was very good before the injury got him. The safeties played quite well along with Sean Lee. Defensive line still seems like a weakness. They've looked to address that with Taco Charlton, Demontre Moore. I don't think that improves the group enough going into next season. Got a couple of corners in there in the draft. It's going to be a case of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Again, this is a team that might need to score a lot of points next year. I think that secondary is a massive, massive concern. I understand, this is a team that doesn't have the most cap in the world to work with, but I think it's going to be a real struggle there. The offense, though, could be good enough, and it'll be interesting if Marinelli can get the defense to sort of do enough once again. I think this team, they could fall back to earth a little bit, maybe go 7-9, 8-8. I'd expect them to finish around 10-6, battling for the division and a wild card spot. So that's the Cowboys. The Giants are not a big fan of their draft, as I made very clear. Evan Ingram's all well and good, but I thought they were fine with weapons. Bringing in Brandon Marshall gives them a really good looking threesome at the wide receiver spot. DJ Fluker, I think he'll be able to step in and contribute. I just feel like they needed to bring in another offensive lineman. They didn't do that. Running back still looks like a big issue to me. So I just don't feel like this team necessarily got better. Defensively, they should still be good. Losing Hankins may hurt a little, but still got a very effective secondary. Linebacker still looks like a problem as well. The offensive line's definitely a problem, but I think this team, you're looking at what you saw last year, could go anything, I think, from... Eli's going to be the big question. I thought he was very poor last year. If he continues to play like that, I think this looks like an 8-8 team. And, I think you'd be looking at anything from 6-10 to 11 wins with this team. If the offensive line steps up and improves, plays well, and Eli can play better as a result, this is a very good team that could easily win 11 games. But I'm not sure I'm not assuming that will be the case. I'm expecting a 6-10 kind of season from the Giants next year. The Eagles, this team had a great off-season, I think. One of the best. Did a great job addressing needs. Receiver was the big question mark heading in. They got Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey. I think that really strengthens them for this year. Timmy Jernigan was a great trade. He'll strengthen that defensive line, which looks absolutely fantastic on paper now. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jernigan, bringing in their first round draft pick in Derek Barnett. That looks like a very strong group. My big question with this team is the cornerback position, where you've got Patrick Robinson, and not a lot of other good options. Their corners in Nolan Callan and Leos McKelvin both gone. Neither of them was particularly good last year. I think that's the biggest issue for them. Running back, I still think, is a problem. They weren't able to address that adequately, in my opinion. But I think defensively, the safety spot's good, the front four's good, linebacker and corner is a bit of an issue, running back's an issue. Other than that, I like this roster. I think this has the looks of a 9-7 team. I think the secondary is going to bite them and cost them a couple of games. Comes down to Carson Wentz. This team could struggle if he doesn't take the next step. I think the lack of running game is going to certainly contribute to that. So, yeah, I think they'll go around 9-7, finish second or third in the division. Potentially could compete for a wild card, but I just think they're maybe a year away from that. But I don't think they're far off. I think they've had a really good off-season. They're a lot better than they were. The Washington Redskins, started off as a pretty disastrous-looking off-season. They managed to resurrect it pretty well. They lost both their receivers in Jackson and Garcon, losing Chris Baker. I think those were all big losses. They've actually done a pretty good job replacing them. Terrell Pryor was a good signing. They got lucky in the draft with Jonathan Allen falling to them. He'll be an adequate replacement for Chris Baker if his health is fine. Zach Brown was a pretty good addition. They needed help at the linebacker spot. And DJ Swearinger, who's bounced around the league a bit, but he'll certainly be able to contribute in that secondary. Again, whether this team is better than it was, that I'm not so sure of. Cousins certainly needs to even out his play, improve how he does towards the end of some seasons. I still look at the back spot as needing a young, agile player that can be there for a while. I still think the secondary's a little bit spotty behind Norman. And on offense, they look quite good. So I think this is a team that, whilst things look disastrous at one point, it sounds like Cousins is back on board. I think this team competes with the Cowboys for the division this year. And I think they could end up going 10-6. It could fall out, don't get me wrong. The defence still does have some issues. Front seven is a bit thin. I think if this team gets hit by injuries, they're in a lot of trouble. But look at them to be a wild card contender in the NFC. We'll move on to the NFC South. And we will start there with the Atlanta Falcons. Not an enormous fan of what they've done. I think the Dontari Poe signing was superb for them. That was a position that needed to be improved. They've done so, even if it's only for a year. Really helps the front seven. Him and Tack McKinley should improve that group. If McKinley can be a third down specialist pass rush for them, he'll help them immediately. The big question here will be what effect Kyle Shanahan leaving goes. The offense very much remains intact, so expect them to continue to be a dominant group. Defensively, not a huge amount of needs there. I think this team's still going to be very good. The secondary is pretty thin beyond true font. I think they're young though. They could improve there. Like the linebacking group, it's a pretty strong roster all round. This is a team that I can see competing for the number one seed in the NFC next year. As long as if the offense carries on with what it's doing, they're certainly going to be there or thereabouts. Not a huge amount to say. They lost a bunch of older dudes, but really this team's looking pretty good on paper going into 2017. So no major weaknesses there. Would maybe like to see him bring in a young guard at the top of the first round. I thought the value was there, but they decided not to. But a fairly solid off-season. They didn't really have too much to do. Expect this team to win at least 10 games, I would think, and competing for the playoffs once again, possibly the one seed. Going on to Carolina, I'm not a particularly big fan of what this team has done this off-season. I like bringing back Julius Peppers. The Matt Khalil signing is one of the worst of the off-season. Captain Mullen's back, which was a surprise after he wasn't too happy. They lost Mike Remmers. I think he was probably a better option than Matt Khalil, so I think that hurts. But I like the draft, getting some more weapons for Cam. I just think this offensive line is still going to be a big problem. The tackle position is just diabolical. They haven't done anything to address that. Khalil was a bit of a disaster for the Vikings. I say a total disaster for the Vikings. McCaffrey will certainly help. They needed someone to handle the load. Jonathan Stewart's always had a propensity for some injuries, and he is getting older. I think McCaffrey is a dynamic player that will certainly help them. But I still look at his tackle spot. I think that's an issue. How much their second-round rookie, whose name's currently eluding me, can help. In year one, maybe not so much. It definitely adds an element to the offense they needed. With Ted Ginn having left, he'll be relied upon to fulfill that role. But McCaffrey is really the X factor. I think any offensive improvement will stem from what he can offer. Defensively, I'm pretty concerned with their ability to generate pass rush. Charles Johnson struggled last year. Julius Peppers isn't an every down player at this point. Lotulelei had a down season. That concerns me. And the corners, they need to continue improving. Otherwise, this secondary is again going to be a liability. This feels like an 8-8 kind of team to me, that could potentially be better if some of the players can recapture the form from a couple of seasons ago. If the offensive line can just hold it together, this team could be very good in competing for the playoffs once again. Heading to New Orleans, who've been fairly busy. Some significant additions to the offense. As always, Larry Warford will be stepping in and replacing Jari Evans. That was a great signing. He'll be fantastic for them. Got a first-round rookie who likely won't play, Imran Ramchick. I suspect he'll be sitting for next season, but he's there for the future. Adrian Peterson was bought in. Ingram looks very expendable now with him and Alvin Kamara having come in. I think Kamara was a fantastic pickup. I really rate him. I think he's going to end up being their lead back when it's all said and done, because he'll be able to help them in all three phases. Although whether he gets past pro early on in his career, we'll find out. I don't think they've done enough defensively. Bringing in Lattimore is fine. Some of the linebackers they brought in, AJ Klein, Manti Te'o, they don't inspire. So those are issues. Alex Okafor is someone I don't necessarily expect to contribute. He's had opportunities. Ted Ginn will just fill that speed role. So offensively, this team's going to carry on. They're going to be great as long as Drew Brees is healthy. The run game's, I think, definitely been improved. Not so much through the Peterson signing, but I think Kamara is going to be a deadly weapon there. I like the receiving group. Even with Cooks gone, Ted Ginn will be able to do that role. He won't be as good at it, but you've got a couple of young players in Willie Snead. And who is the other one? Michael Thomas. They should continue to improve. So I think that side of the ball's all well and good. I love the Lattimore pick. I think he gives them a corner. Whether they've done enough elsewhere to improve this defence, I don't think they have. Secondary still terrifies me if I'm a Saints fan. I still think Vaccari's a liability back there. A lot of Von Bell played quite well last year, but the front seven, you've got Cam Jordan, I don't think there's too much, and Sheldon Rankins, I don't know too much else. Well, I don't think they've got too much else there. Don't like the linebacking crew. I think they will end up being the secondary, and the linebackers will end up holding this team back. And at the end of the day, they'll be what they've been for the last few years, a 7-9 to 9-7 kind of team. If defense can step up, then look out. They could be very good, but I don't think they will. I just don't see a talent there. So I look at 6-10, 7-9 as the likely range. If they do step up, we might see, competing for a wild card or even the division. And then my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I quite like what the Bucs have done this off-season in some ways, and I dislike it in others. I don't think they've done a brilliant job of addressing some needs. The offensive line is average at best, I think, and Marpet's a good player. Donovan Smith is fine. I'd rather see him at right tackle. Haven't done anything there. I think that remains a concern. The weapons on offense, it looks like an incredibly deep group now. Bringing in Deshaun Jackson to be the number 2 alongside Mike Evans, OJ Howard and Cameron Brate now at tight end, Chris Godwin as the 3rd or 4th receiver, because you've already got Adam Humphries there as sort of a slot receiver. I think that's a very dangerous group. However, I don't know if they need to necessarily add that many. Running back still remains a question mark. Charles Sims disappointed last year. Doug Martin disappointed last year. They both got injured. Quiz Rogers played well in But if the three of them can platoon together to be competent, at least offer the threat of a run game that wasn't there last year, that would be great. I'm not sure the offensive line is going to be good enough to allow for that, especially moving Marpet to centre. I think that opens up so that there's two issues at guard. The Bucks seem very confident in J.R. Sweezy being good. I'm not so confident in that. Defensively, starting 11 looks quite good. The Chris Baker signing, him and McCoy, I think will be one of the best interior tandems in the league. Noah Spence and Robert Ayers, if Spence continues to improve, that should be a good group. The linebackers are fine. Corner, if Hargraves can improve and Grimes can stay at a level he doesn't fall off because of age, I think that could be good. Bringing in Wilcox and Justin Evans in the second round to play safety. Keith Tandy played well toward the end of last year. Be interested to see what they do at safety. They made an effort there. But my concerns are the offensive line and the corner group. They look particularly weak. This team's still got a lack of depth. I do think they'll be competing for a playoff spot if they can stay healthy. I think that's the big question with this team. If they can do so, I think I see this as a 10-6 team. I think the offense could be very explosive. I just wish I'd seen some more help on the offensive line. So there we have it. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into next year. Pretty big fan of what they've done for the most part. Just lack of O-line makes me sad. Moving on to the NFC West, we've got the Arizona Cardinals. Free agency hurt this team a lot. Evan Mathis is gone. He was pretty good for them. Calais Campbell gone to Jacksonville. Kevin Minter's gone to Cincinnati. Tony Jefferson, who was fantastic for them last year, he's gone. I think these are, there's a lot of starters there on that defense, and some, Campbell and Jefferson were both very good, played at Pro Bowl levels last year. They've looked to replace them in the draft. Well, a couple of them. Minter will be replaced by first-round pick Sam Reddick, which I was a big fan of, and Buddha Brown in the secondary with their second-round pick. It still feels like a step backwards. I still quite like the Cardinals. Again, they had a weird season last year where they lost a lot of games because of special teams. Remember, they could have beat the Patriots in week 1. They had that weird tie against the Seahawks because Catanzaro couldn't make kicks. He missed a lot of kicks last season. They've looked to replace 2 of those defenders. I think the front 3 really concerns me. They're going to be relying, I think, on last year's first rounder Nkumdichi to step up. He's shown me no reason to believe he does. If the offensive line can stay healthy, the offense could be pretty good. Of course, David Johnson's a monster. The receiving group is okay. John Brown, if he can stay healthy, I think he's pretty good. JJ Nelson offers him a speed option. Fitzgerald's still a contributor. O-line needs to stay healthy. We saw what happened with some injuries there last year. And defence, I think, has got some holes. Patrick Peterson's great. Who's playing alongside him, I'm not sure. I like their pass rushers, but the rest of their front 7 concerns me. They'll be relying on Reddick, I think, to contribute heavily next year. I think this team, fortunately, they're in a pretty weak division. I think they'll finish around at least sort of 7-9, 8-8, because they'll be able to beat up on both the Rams and the Niners. I don't know if I can see it all coming together for them for that one final run, as much as I'd kind of like to, because I like Bruce Arians a lot. I think 7-9 seems about right. Could end up, high end could end up competing with the Seahawks, but I think they need a lot of players to contribute next year that haven't either are rookies or haven't shown anything to this point, especially for that defense to get up to the level we've been used to over the last couple of years. Moving on to the LA Rams, and this team, I just don't understand their approach at all. They paid Robert Woods far too much money. For the short term, I can understand the John Sullivan and Whitworth signings. They do have a quarterback they selected first overall, who, whilst he was poor, the offensive line was absolutely atrocious. So Whitworth and Sullivan should solidify 2 of those spots. So I can understand those signings. Bringing in Connor Barwin fits sort of with the scheme. That's fine. However, I still look at this offense and I see one that's devoid of playmakers. Cooper Kupp will give them, I think he'll step in and be a great slot receiver for them straight away. What they do to Von Austin, I don't know. Robert Woods, like a mediocre number 2 replacement for Kenny Britt, I guess. I don't I don't get that. Why they didn't target some linemen in the draft, I'm not sure, because that line is just that bad at this point in time. It's hard to see too many positives for this team. They brought in another tight end as well, but yeah, receiver still looks like a bad group. Just a bunch of mediocre guys. The offensive line is poor. This team doesn't look like it got much better to me. The defense should be pretty great under Wade Phillips. It'll be interesting to see how some of those guys are used. But yeah, lost a couple of guys. Nothing of major note there. We'll see what happens. This still feels like a bad team to me. I think I'm still looking in at like a 3 to 6 win range for them. Defense could be great and lift them to a few wins, but I just cannot see this offense being anything other than bad. Moving on to San Fran. I mean, this team's had a pretty good draft. I'm not so sure about the rest of their offseason. Bringing the Bears quarterbacks along in Brian Hoyer and Barkley. It looks like Hoyer will be the starter. He'll, helm the team for a year and not do too much, I would assume. Bought in Pierre Garçon. I like Garçon a lot, but there's not much else there. Jeremy Zutter, that was a nice trade they made with the Ravens. I think he'll solidify the O-line. The O-line's not bad. But other than that, I just look at the weapons here. It's like, well, you got Pierre Garçon, Vance McDonald, I suppose, and a mediocre quarterback getting the ball. Carlos Hyde's okay. Not too much beyond that. The draft helped strengthen the defense, where they've brought in Solomon Thomas. He'll join Armstead and Buckner in the front four. They got Reuben Foster, who I think was a great selection. Will join Bowman in the middle. That could be a good pair. This defense has to start to show, some real quality. There's a lot of high draft picks, a lot of first rounders on this defense. I mean, there's about 6 or 7. That needs to start paying off for this team. If it does, and it could, there is a lot of talent there. I think, they could be better than some people think with the offense. At the end of the day, you just do not have the weapons to get things done. I think this is a 3 to 6 win team. They can look to go get the quarterback next year. Losing Torrey Smith and Garçon, that feels like maybe an improvement there. Nothing else particularly significant. Man, it's amazing how bad this roster is after just a few years removed from a Super Bowl appearance. So yeah, I think this is going to be another bad season in San Fran. It's a rebuild. I think they had a very positive draft. Not sure about paying fullbacks as much money as they did. Never thought I'd see that. The Seattle Seahawks, perennial NFC powerhouse, I think they've had an interesting offseason, bringing in Eddie Lacy and then trading Marshawn Lynch. Well, not that the Lynch trade you can spite them for. It was either do it or have him sit at home. Might as well get something for him. Lacy makes a lot of sense for what they want to do. I think it's a good signing. A lot of upside there, so I think that's a real positive for them. I quite like Arthur Brown. I could see him. Well, I like what he was in college. He's not done anything this league, but I think that was a one that could end up working out well for them. Bringing in Blair Walsh just feels like a sick joke, if I'm honest. The draft, once again, trading out of the first round. They don't like first rounders. Malik McDowell made a lot of sense. I mocked him to them a couple of times. Defensive tackle, I think, has been a position that's kind of become a weakness to them over the last couple of years. If his head's on right, I think that's a really good signing. Do I think this team's got much better this offseason? Not particularly. Haven't got significantly worse. O-line still concerns me. I don't think Luke Jokel's going to make any difference. From what I saw in Jacksonville, he's not going to help too much. So I think really at the end of the day, they're relying on McDowell to come in and help. I think they still feel like they're good enough. They drafted a lot of safeties, so they're preparing, I think, for Cam Chancellor to possibly be let go next year. I'm not a huge fan of what this team did, to be honest. I think they could have been a little bit more aggressive in the draft in terms of trying to find players that could step in and help right away, especially when it comes to the offensive line. They're just going to hope to patch that group together again. But they're not going to look significantly different next year. Eddie Lacy will, I suppose, be the big question mark. Again, this team's as long as they stay healthy and intact, I think they've got a pretty soft division. I think you're looking at least 10 or 11 wins, possibly competing for the 1 seed. This team should be good again. So there you have it. That's my view on the NFC. I'll be doing the AFC just later. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree? Do you have any particularly interesting opinions or thoughts on any teams off season? Let me know, whether it's in the comment section below. Find us on Cover Zero at Facebook, or find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. I'll be more than happy to respond to each and anyone who does get in touch. Thank you very much for watching. The rest of this week, we'll be doing Cover Who, which is why I do an episode discussing a player that I feel people have forgotten about, who was very good while he was in the league. Talking about the Browns QB situation in a QB quandary episode. Doing this, but for the AFC. Next up, and reviewing the top 100 list and giving my next 10 picks tomorrow. So check all those out. Check out the draft reviews, free agency reviews, do a lot of stuff like that. And hopefully you enjoy those. Thank you very much for watching. If you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, it'd be greatly appreciated. Have a great day. Pleasure as always, and go Bucks.